Chapter 6 Angels.
Fearing their mother had gone through the trauma they'd just experienced, Bo and Ty burst through the front door, frantically calling for her. They were embarrassed to find her sitting calmly at the kitchen table with their sisters, Steph and Madison, who had shuttled in from the airport while their brothers were on the hill. Now they were all there, working on Madison's December wedding plans, with checklists and magazine photos spread all over the table. "We just finished an early lunch," said Steph, licking the barbecued chip residue off her fingers as she set her plate in the sink. "What planet have you two been on? And why are you so hot and sweaty?" Abby was more direct. "How was the hill?" she asked, smiling. "How did you know where we were?" asked Bo, still catching his breath. "I saw you out my bedroom window. It was nice to see you two climbing back up there again, together. It's been a while." Bo nodded nervously, but he didn't say another word. His mother's calmness had put him at ease. She had been spared the ordeal he and Ty had gone through. So now he was looking for a way to change the subject, as he had no desire to explain why they'd climbed the hill or the difficulty they'd run into on the other side. Seeing that Bo didn't want to talk about the climb, Madison threw him a lifeline. "There's a sandwich in the fridge for each of you," she said. "You'd better eat them now. If you don't, Sam will probably snarf them when he gets here." "I don't know what you see in that guy," said Bo, pulling himself together. 6'6", skinny, he's Ichabod Crane on a diet. "He's very smart, though," said Ty. Madison detected his sarcasm and stared at him. "He's smart 'cause he's marrying you," said Ty, still agitating. "Hey, Ty," said Bo, "I was just kidding, okay? I really like Sam. He's a math genius, he treats me good, he's a good arm wrestler, and he's smarter than Dad." "Well, I'm just convinced he's a safe way to go," said Abby, trying to steer the conversation back to the wedding plans. She and her daughters had only a couple of days to get a lot done before the girls headed back to Utah. "You guys go eat your lunch and figure out how to grow up to be as cool as Sam one day." "On a medieval rack, maybe," laughed Ty as he snatched his sandwich out of the fridge and headed outside toward the spiral staircase that led to the deck. Bo sighed and shook his head. Then he grabbed his own sandwich, pulled down 2 small bags of chips from the cupboard and a couple of water bottles, and started after Ty. "Did you see that?" asked Steph, glancing at her sister and mother. "Bo actually got something for Ty. Bet he hasn't done that for a while." Steph was 11 years old when Bo was born, and Madison was 9. And they noticed everything about their younger brothers, even now, after having been away from home. Indeed, sometimes they seemed to be the only ones who thought Bo and Ty would amount to anything. From the time the boys were little, the girls had told them they were going to save the world one day. When they were babies, their sisters would pin towels to the back of the boys' shirts like capes and pretend to fly them around the house like superheroes. Through all of the birth defect troubles over all the years, Abby and Blake had dealt with things the best they could. But the boys' issues took a major toll on them and their relationship. Abby had been in the trenches at home 24/7, while Blake escaped to the office and long business trips. Helpful when he could be, but detached. As strong and capable as she was, Abby never could have gotten through it without her angels, Steph and Madison. They'd been her eyes and ears and support, pretty much an extra set of parents for the boys. Mostly, they had regular brother-sister relationships with Bo and Ty. But the age differences made them feel more responsible for their brothers. Only now that the guys were older did their sisters feel comfortable being away from home. Madison in college, and Steph already graduated in her first full-time job. Up on the deck, Bo and Ty sat down at the round, glass-top patio table to eat. The hill across the road teased them again. To its right rose Mount Diablo in the distance. "Is this our hill now?" asked Ty. "It must be," said Bo. "I feel like we own it." He was bolting down his food so he could get away. "So why is there something on the other side that makes it so scary?" asked Ty. "Look," said Bo, trying to explain it away. "Dad said he's seen coyotes at night crossing the street there. Maybe that's all it was. They've got to go somewhere to be out of sight during the day, right? We invaded their space, so they were preparing to defend." "There's no coyotes in there," said Ty. "Dad was just messing with us. I say we go back up to the top when it cools down later today, so we can get the good feelings back." "Okay," said Bo, not meaning it. He peered down at the backyard. "Oops, I forgot to mow the lawn this morning. See ya." Bo swallowed the rest of his sandwich in one bite, took a long drink of water, and flew down the spiral staircase. Then he went to the tool shed and dragged out the lawnmower. Before he cranked it up, he looked back at Ty. He was chewing his food slowly and gawking at the hill. He seemed to be in a daze. "Hey," shouted Bo, "why don't you go inside and take a nap or something?" Ty looked down at him, flipped his processor off his ear, shook his head, and turned toward the hill again. "Tune me in, tune me out," thought Bo. "Whatever." He yanked the cord on the mower. Leaving his unfinished lunch on the deck, Ty descended the staircase and went into the family room through the patio doors. Bo stopped mowing briefly and followed a few steps behind to see what his brother was up to. He paused on the porch step and watched. Ty sat down at the family computer next to the big screen TV, plugged his processor into the audio jack, turned on some music, and digitally sketched his first doing dream. As he drew, Steph joined him, looking over his shoulder. "That's amazing," she signed. "Tell me about it." Ty loved talking with Steph since she was the best signer in the family. Without mentioning it was a doing dream, he signed back that it was his recollection of a dream he had had a few nights before. He'd thought it was pretty interesting, so he wanted to capture it before he forgot it. "You're such a good artist," said Steph. "Was there anything about the dream that was unusual? If you tell me, maybe it will help you remember more things for your picture there." Before Bo could see Ty sign his answer, Madison snuck up behind him from the patio and flipped his sore back. He jumped. "A little touchy, are we?" said Madison. Bo winced and nodded. "So, if I promise not to bonk you again, will you fill me in on what happened at Stinson? Mom said it was super scary." Bo was hesitant. And like before, his reaction was a code Madison easily cracked. "Whatever you can remember," she said. Bo was unsure what to say, so he hurried through his explanation. "Okay, there was this shark no one else could see but me and Ty. And we helped some kids out of the water. It was stressful and my bag broke, so I had to patch things up for the ride home. It was a little messy, but nobody died, so it was all good. Oh, and Ty got a couple of great shark close-ups." "And?" said Madison, one eye cocked. Bo tensed up, as he could tell she wanted more details. Before she could dig deeper, though, Abby called her and Steph back to the kitchen. Bo exhaled. "Later, dude," she warned as she stepped away. Once Bo finished his chores and Ty his drawing, they decided to watch TV for a while, the closed captioning keeping pace like it always did when Ty watched. Bo was hoping his brother would forget a second hill climb, in part because he didn't want to give Steph and Madison more reason to wonder what was going on. It had been hard enough dancing around Madison, and he didn't know how much Ty had told Steph. As the show ended, Ty went to tap Bo on the shoulder. Bo grabbed his hand. "Stop that," he said. "Time to go," said Ty. "We needs to get back up there before it gets any later." Steph had gone to an early dinner with Madison and Sam. Blake and Abby didn't seem to be in the house. Perhaps they were in the garage, but finding them wasn't the boys' objective. They grabbed 2 water bottles, left the house without telling anyone, jogged out of the court, across the street, and back up the hill. "We don't know where Mom and Dad are," said Bo as they reached the top. "And they don't know where we are, so why don't we stay here right on top, where they can spot us if they get worried?" His cover blown, Bo no longer felt the need to hide the fact he was spending time with Ty. The boys found the rocks they'd used earlier and cleared 2 more small spaces, this time right at the top. They sat down and traded more doing dreams as afternoon ripened into evening. About an hour into their conversation, Bo noticed Blake lying in a lounge chair on the deck, his hands behind his head, gazing up at them. He never took his eyes off them. "Why do you think Dad's looking at us like that?" Bo asked Ty. "No idea," said Ty. A few minutes later, Abby ran from her bedroom onto the deck, panicked. Blake pointed up at Bo and Ty and had her look. She sat down next to him. They said no more to each other. They just kept looking up at their sons. Finally, Steph and Madison showed up on the deck. Abby pointed them at the boys. They looked up, squinted, shook their heads, and shrugged as if everything seemed normal to them. When Abby's gaze wandered back to the boys, her daughters glanced at each other and nodded. They looked up one more time as they turned to go back inside. "Humans," signed Steph so as not to be heard. "Humans indeed," signed Madison. What a weird reaction, thought Bo. Before he could give it more thought, he spotted storm clouds rolling in and suggested that he and Ty call it a day. Only then did he notice it was pitch black. With the sun gone and the moon hidden behind the low-hanging clouds, the brothers headed down after the first of a dozen lightning bolts and thunderclaps showed off in the distance. They used the north side of the hill this time, so as to stay as far away as they could from the wicked trees on the south. Through the lights on the deck, Bo could see his parents still watching them. He figured they must have been able to see them in the dim glow of the flickering street light at the end of the block. As the boys moved further down the hill, however, he could tell they weren't looking just at him and Ty, but at the night sky directly above them as well. As dark as it was, and he and Ty without flashlights, Bo found it funny they could see well enough to miss all the rocks and rodent dens as they zipped down to the street.
End of chapter.